I coach that when you're in alignment, magic happens. What happened with us was completely magical. We had no money. I mean, we had some money to live on, but there was no money that we're smart about and put aside to invest in real estate. We were like, we're so capable. We're such hard workers. Look at what we just did. Give us some money. And people did. I think that's really the answer to your question of like, how did I do all of that? Is that like, I worked for years and years to really know myself. So when my gut would have pull to do something, I wouldn't disagree with it. I would then go take an action.
Hello, and welcome back to the Creative Wealth Building series, where I am interviewing creative entrepreneurs who have taken a non-traditional path to their lives and built money-making businesses that align with their passions and their values. In today's episode, I am interviewing Anna K. Morris, who is a mindset coach and the co-founder of Happy Karma Homes. In this episode, I'm going to pull back the curtain on how Anna and her husband Derek left their corporate jobs to embark on a 3-year global sabbatical, which eventually led them back to Austin, Texas, where they decided to pursue their passion in real estate and start their own design build company. You're going to hear the inspiring story of how Anna and Derek secured their first real estate investment property with $0 of their own personal funds, as well as how they acquired their next property with $10 and a bag of tacos. We're going to be diving into Anna's financials, as well as how Anna solely relies on her gut and intuition to make business, financial, and life decisions. This episode takes so many magical twists and turns. You're going to love it. Let's dive in. Anna K. Morris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I am so happy for you to be here too, because you have lived quite the life. You quit your job, you've been traveling all over the world for several years, and now you and your husband own a design build business, you're a real estate investor, and we're all dying to know, how did you make this happen? So I want to start with you just telling us about making this big decision to walk away from your job in pharmaceutical sales to pursue other dreams for yourself.
You know, I think that we're all really quick to think that like it's an overnight thing. People talk about like, oh, you're an overnight success, but they didn't see like the years, the decades, the whatever it is, right? The way that I left my pharmaceutical career, I mean, that took years. I mean, not to dash anybody's dreams of like, it can happen quickly. And I think once you see very clearly what isn't working for you, you can start to see what you might want to do differently. Before 2011, I really started in 2008 in like a self-help class, kind of like a non-sexy Tony Robbins in like the basement of a building in Penn Station in New York where I was living. And I just went there because I was really unhappy. I like had the resume or CV, wherever you are listening from, of like what people say makes you happy, right? Like a good job, a stable job, enough money, plenty of money. You know, for me, it was living in New York City. I had a nice boyfriend. I had a great apartment. I went to fancy parties, you know, whatever. And I was really deeply dissatisfied. I saw a coworker of mine who we'd never really clicked. And she just seemed radically different and so like at peace and ease. And I think that that's really where it all started, was I noticed that. And rather than kind of keeping to myself and saying nothing, I went up to her and I said, you know, we've never really clicked. I don't think you really like me. I've never really liked you. And she was like, that's true. And she said, and I said, but I like you now. And I would really like to know what's different. And she said, it's funny you should ask. I did this 3-day personal development class. It's Landmark Forum, if you're familiar with it. And it just changed my whole life. But really what it changed for her was, and what I know now, is that like it changed her whole perspective of life. It changed the lens that she saw her life through. And that was really what I needed, right? And through that one class, then it opened Pandora's box.
So for you, you did the forum and you thought to yourself, there's got to be a better way.
I was a whole mess.
Yes.
I wish it were just money for me. It was my whole life. I was so far off track from like the 5-year-old self in me who you are at 3, 4, and 5 years old is really who you are. And then you spend the rest of your life either enhancing or hiding aspects of yourself to win approval, right? To gain love, to avoid, looking bad, to stay looking good, right? And there's so much tied up in money in that. I mean, that you have a show about it, like, better than most people. I think that's really the answer to your question of like, how did I do all of that? Is that like I worked for years and years to really know myself. So when my gut would have, like when I would have a pull to do something, I wouldn't disagree with it. I would then go take an action.
So the moment you decided to leave your job, what was next for you? What did you decide you wanted to do next?
Well, so for 4 years, I wanted to leave. I wanted to leave my job for the whole time I had my job. Like I was, they would want to move me up into management, or like I would win an award or whatever. And I was like, no, I don't want to be here. Like, I want to do the least amount for the most money. But I lived in New York City, and I was single, and I had a car and a really great lifestyle, and I was really hooked on the money. And so I started a wellness consulting business on the side. And that's the part of entrepreneurship that I think is so important, because people are so quick to just like pull the ripcord, quit the job without having a plan. I really didn't do that. For 4 years, played around with, does this feel good? Do I like this? What is it like to own your own business? And through that, I was like, yeah, I really do like this. I'd had a dream, and I very clearly saw like a dog in a backyard with twinkle lights and the man of my dreams. I didn't know who he was, but like there was just this feeling that I had. And at that point I knew I needed to leave New York. Moved to Austin, and I moved to Austin, and at my going away party, I told people, I was like, I'm going to move to Austin. I'm going to meet the man of my dreams and get a dog and a backyard with twinkle lights. And people thought I was crazy.
Until what happened?
A month later, I was standing in my very perfect apartment. And because this is a money show, I think this is very important to note. And I'm standing in my perfect apartment. It's 5 days before Christmas. And my mom and I had just finished it. And we opened the door after running an errand. And she's like, Anna, look, it's everything you ever wanted. It's your perfect apartment. And Whitney, I stood there with tears streaming down my face, because I was like, no, I got confused. I didn't want a perfect apartment. I wanted to meet the man of my dreams and get a dog and a backyard with twinkle lights. And I got confused about the stuff again. And I'd spent all this money. I mean, I had it. That was always the plan. Like I was setting up a life in Austin. But when I did, I had a really big walk-in closet. And as a New Yorker, I'd never had that, right? Like I just had like these little clothes right here. There was like so much space. And my mom was like, oh, you can put your winter jackets here and all these things. And I was like, oh no, I'm leaving that space, because my future boyfriend is going to wear button-down shirts. And I even had hangers, and I even bought men's body wash. And 5 days later was my first date with Derek. And a month later, I moved in with him. And I didn't even live in that apartment. I mean, I was in that apartment like 2 or 3 months. Our first date was Christmas night. And I had no idea it was a date. I thought it was like, seeing an old guy, that my family knew. And I needed a break from my family, because now I saw them all the time. And so I was like, yeah, Christmas night sounds great. I'm tired of all the family time. So we went out, and our third date was New Year's Eve, and he told me that he was in love with me and wanted to get married and have babies with me.
And how many years ago was that?
2000. It'll be 11 years.
Oh,
Barney's 11.
so
Both my dogs are sleeping underneath me right now. So I'm like, how old's Barney? Barney will be 11 in December. So yeah, it'll be 11 years.
Oh, congratulations. I love hearing that for you. So you met Derek, and then you started to sprinkle your Anna magic on him. Derek was working at the time. He was working, I think you mentioned it, Schlumberger.
He was an accountant, still is, and worked in project finance for Schlumberger, which is a very large oil and gas manufacturing company. And he was really kind of on the CFO kind of track. And I really knew that he wasn't. And it took a little bit of time for him to know that, because I think especially when it comes to men, there's so much identity tied up in career in money. I remember we hired like a Dave Ramsey financial planner because we weren't talking the same about money. There was this one really big moment in our relationship. I think we were newlyweds. We'd been married maybe a few months, and he came home and he was like, "We are broke." And I mean, I was like, "We own this beautiful house. We can sell it tomorrow and make a ton of money." And he was like, "But where will we live?" I was like, "Well, we don't need this house." Like, I'm just not, it's funny that we have a design build company because like, I don't really care that much most of the time. Even though I like nice homes, I don't, not at the cost of like him saying we're broke. And so I could just see really clearly, because I'm the daughter of parents that had very different money conversations and money perceptions. I was really clear that like we needed, you know, we didn't necessarily need to go to therapy, but we needed somebody to kind of get us on the same page when it came to money. And I think that was really the key when I look back at like how it all happened. When you go and tell people that you're going to do something crazy, like not have kids and go and travel the world instead and leave your very successful career for, years to never come back to it. That's not, your family and friends are not like, yeah, do that.
Yeah.
They're not going to do that. Sorry.
So you and Derek spent years together, and then Derek decided that he was going to quit his job, and you two decided to travel the world for 1 year, which ended up turning into 3. Can you tell me about the financials of your life at that moment to make that happen? Because there are a lot of people out there who would love to be able to quit their jobs for 3 years and go travel, but they worry about the money. So where were you all financially in order to make this decision?
That's why we hired the financial planner, because we knew that I think when we hired him, it was 9 months before we left. So it wasn't even a full year. And I think we had like $25,000 of credit card debt. I mean, we had some debt, and we were living far beyond our means. We were just like racking up the credit card debt every month. And within months, it was radical. I remember that within the first 3 or 4 months of working with him, we went from overspending $2,000 or $3,000 a month to saving $5,000. Like the spread was huge because I am a spender. Derek is not, but Derek was really, he was afraid that I was going to leave. And he really thought that like he needed to like take me out to dinner. And I remember going to like a sushi dinner on a Tuesday night that was like $350, thinking like, is this sustainable? Like, should we be doing this? So I didn't really know until it all hit the fan. And he was like, we can't, we're so, and I was like, I wondered, that felt like it couldn't last. Right. And once he got that, like, I wasn't going anywhere, and I also didn't need to do that. I did that for 12 years in New York. I was all set. I didn't need to be dazzled by all of that. Then we really got on the same page. And I remember we put ourselves on a cash diet. We did the whole Dave Ramsey, like, envelope thing, right? Like, I can remember like counting out dollar bills at the Kroger around the corner. And I really love winning games because, I grew up in sales. So if you tell me that like I only have $100, like by God, like I'm going to win that game. So I just had to reframe it as to like, these games are going to have us do this really big thing that we want to do. Because I have a coaching background and I coach that when you're in alignment, magic happens. What happened with us was completely magical. So at that same Kroger, he called me one day and he was like, so I just got out of a meeting where I told them that I was leaving my job in May. This was like February. And I was like, oh, okay, so we're really going to do this. And he was like, yeah. And the number was, he needed a number in the bank to be able to do this, right? He needed like some security, and the number was 250,000. And then all I needed to do was now execute to make sure that we had 250,000 in the bank. So the question really became, how much can we sell our house for? What is the profit spread on that? What do we need to do? What's the least amount of investment for the highest return? So I did a light renovation on our house in like 10 days, found this really great guy. And the day we put our house on the market, it was a Friday, I came out of a yoga class. It was like 10 a.m. I'll never forget. I'm in the parking lot and Derek calls me and he's like, I just got out of a meeting and I think they're going to ask us to move to England. And I was like, oh. okay. He said, do you want to do that? This is Northern England in Leeds. And I was like, well, yeah, that sounds great. And so later that afternoon, his boss, who is a very good friend of his, who had become his boss in the last few weeks and knew he was planning on leaving, said, how long do I have you for? And Derek said, May. And he said, well, would you consider moving to England and going until October? And we will pay for everything. So we now go from now we've sold our house. We sold our house and we made $150,000 on it. And we already had some money saved up. So now we're maybe at like 200. And we're moving and we have no mortgage. We literally have no bills. And they're going to pay for everything while we live in England for 6 months.
Amazing.
So 250, you're there. It was like overnight. We went from like we'd paid our credit card debt off. That was what we did in the 9 months. And then this like thing happened that we couldn't have predicted, all because it was really in alignment with like what we truly, truly, truly wanted. And then the craziest thing happened while we're there. I was like, it really would be great if you could get to the end of the year, because that's when bonuses happen, right? If you're listening and you're in the corporate world, you know, in my pharmaceutical world, you'd always want to get to the end of the year to get the bonus. And he said, yeah, but the project, I can't stay here for tax reasons past October. And I was like, yeah, but is there any way you could get to December? And he said, well, the project needs to go to Romania and the guy has a newborn and he won't move until January. He was like, do you want to move to Romania? So we did. We did. I don't think I told you this.
No, you didn't.
We moved to Romania. But again, this is like all because when I know, and I don't argue with my gut. I don't reason it. I don't listen to other people. I mostly don't even tell people. I just listen to my gut and I do the small actions in alignment with what my gut is telling me. Then at the end of the year, they do layoffs. He didn't know that this was coming. He gets laid off, which means he gets a severance package, which means the biggest part is that he gets all of his stock vested, which is like a windfall of money. And that was what really, like, those things that happened in that year lined us up to then not work for the next 3.
Wow. What a magical series of events that unfolded. I love this story because I think that so many people, once they actually start to have a vision and a direction for where they want to go with their money and what they want, is amazing how these things will start to open up for you, how the universe really will provide once you allow yourself to get clear. You two decided to travel the world for a year that turned into 3. Can you tell me about that experience for you? How did you manage that financially, number one? And number 2, how was the experience being off traveling for 3 years?
So the first year was like a proper trip around the world, what people would think of as a trip around the world. We did not have a home. We had 1 storage unit. I think we eventually ended up with 2 or 3, but at the time, just 1. We had no cars. I mean, we sold literally everything, but we did keep some of our, some of the furniture and pieces that we loved, we put in storage. And we left our dog with my father-in-law on a farm. And we did 30 countries in 10 months. I think in hindsight, if anybody wanted to do something like this, I would recommend going for 2 or 3 months and really like getting to know a place and being there for a while. That in hindsight, we just would have loved. But it was fun to do it fast and furious, and we didn't have kids. And, our whole trip was like this comedy of errors, of things happening, and we couldn't have ever predicted. And we actually do our real estate business like that, a coaching business like that. Like we just kind of do it all like that because we trust ourselves.
Yeah. So your trip ended up going from 1 year to 3 years. What made you decide to come back to Austin?
Well, we were tired. Yeah. So after the trip around the world, we went and lived in Todos Santos, Mexico. And we lived there because I had always wanted because I found a list of like things that I had wanted. And it was like, learn Spanish, learn how to surf, live on the beach. I was like, we can knock out 3 things in just this one decision. It's very inexpensive to live there. And we just really needed to kind of reset. We didn't know that we were also going to get another dog there. So we went and lived there. And then Derek had always wanted to do a trailer trip where you like pull a travel trailer or, you can drive it, whatever you want. But I really didn't grow up camping. I did not want to do that. And so I said, if you want to do that, I will agree to it before we start a family. And if we're going to start a family when we move back and like, back to reality, then now's your window. And he flew to Austin that weekend and bought Trixie, our trailer, who I'm actually getting ready to sell. And that was our first flip, right? That was our first like real estate, renovation flip. We like took this very ugly brown trailer and painted the whole thing white, put down these beautiful floors, made it like golden white and boho chic. And it was fabulous. And we lived in that for 6 months, and we did 26 states, about 25,000 miles. Yeah. From Austin to Santa Barbara up to Vancouver, over to Vermont, down to Key West, got pregnant in Key West, came back to Austin, found out I was pregnant, then started into real estate. Because what we realized while we were traveling, we knew that our next career, we wanted it to be in alignment, right? And we knew we wanted to work together. We really love being with each other. And that's not for everybody, but it is for us. And we just knew that where it never felt like work for us was when we were talking about houses or neighborhoods or design. Eric had always wanted to be an architect, and I had always wanted to be an interior designer. So it was a really natural thing for us to do next.
Wow. I love this story. I love that you bought a travel trailer named Trixie, which I really hope I can have some pictures of so I can put it in this
Oh,
video.
yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm literally
And
like sharing about her today and telling a story about her, and we're going to sell her because we have 2 little boys now. We need a little more space. But
yeah.
Trixie was magical.
Yeah. So you come back to Austin, you find out you're pregnant, and then you decide to get into real estate. That sounds like that was probably a very busy year.
Yeah, it was. When you're doing it, you don't realize it. But yeah, it was. And it felt so natural. Again, I just keep coming back to when you really know yourself and you're acting in alignment with your, what I call little voice. It just all kind of, you don't have to justify or explain or anything at all. Even when I was like, now I think that we'll have kids, like I got pregnant that time. I just always felt like it was going to work out. But then when we wanted to have a second baby, I was like, I just feel like it's going to work out. And then it did. I had Jack and Dean at 40 and 42. So, while that's really common in New York, it's less common in Texas. I just had this inner knowing that any sooner would have been horrible for me.
Yeah.
For me.
Absolutely. So tell me, how did you all end up getting into your first real estate property after you moved to Austin?
Well, as luck would have it, similar to what I've said already, we saw this property. A friend of ours was working with a realtor and a builder and kind of doing projects on the east side. And this was in 2019. And it's all relational. That's the real thing that I want people to take away from this. It has everything to do with your relationships. We had no money. I mean, we had some money to live on, but there was no money that we were smart about and put aside to invest in real estate. That was not the situation. We were like, we're so capable. We're such hard workers. Look at what we just did. Give us some money. And people did. That was so crazy. Like they did. People just, because we did this crazy thing. And so people had paid attention and believed in us. And it's really like people's belief in us that got our first project off the ground. So February, the deal comes across our plate and we know nothing, right? We saw the property and it was like trees everywhere, which, in Austin, like the city loves the trees. And I love that about the city, but it's really can be hard to work with. And so it was a triangular lot. There were a lot of things that we were like, the numbers are going to be so close. Best case scenario was still a little too close. It was our first deal. It was going to be a scrape and a new build. And we were like, who do we think we are? We can't do something like that, right? So then months go by. June, I get lost going to meet a girlfriend at her ceramic studio that's over at Springdale Station. And I get a little turned around and I end up driving a different way to buy that same property. And I called Derek and I was like, I think we should buy that property. And he was like, Anna, that was February. It's already gone. Like, there's no way it's still available. And I'm like, but I just have a feeling that we should buy that. That's it. That's the one. And I just have a feeling. And sure enough, we called the realtor and 2 investors had bought it and it had fallen through on both times because of the trees, because people didn't want to deal with the trees. But Derek loves trees. and he likes designing tree houses. So then that was it. We joined a real estate network, and we'd gotten to know some people, and they liked us and believed in us, and they knew that we'd not done a project, but they knew, like, kind of who we are as people. And we had 7 people. It was $50,000. So we raised $350,000, like, by the skin of our teeth. It was just at the down to the wire minute, because the funding was all complicated. And because of Derek's background in project finance for oil and gas companies, that is a huge, reason why our projects work, because, like, he's used to running $1 billion projects. So this is like nothing for him. And then I just have a really good, like, sense of gut. And I'm like, I just think this is it. And then he really will make it work. And so we raised $350,000. We partnered up with a builder. We did a percentage split. And then we had our first deal, and we did 2 houses, and we sold them for more than people said we could. And then the houses after that, I realized that what was overwhelming me about real estate was all of the options, right? There's so many cool areas. And at that point I had, just had a baby, and I was like, I just have to focus on, like, where would I want to live? Like, what speaks to me as, like, as a new family? Like, where would I want to live? And then once I narrow it in on that, which was Western Trails, and that's by Central Market South, like right at, what is that? Pack Saddle, and, right just south of 290. And once I focused on that area, I was like, I went walking over. I pretended like I lived there. We lived in Travis Heights. But I pretended like I lived there, and we met neighbors who were like the social directors of the neighborhood, and they knew about houses. And I literally bought a house in my pajamas with a $10 option and a bag of tacos. Because, I knew but I knew the numbers. I knew, like, the guy was like, I was like, I want to buy your house. It was this old man who had inherited this house, and he happened to be in the driveway. And I was like, I want to buy your house. And he was like, you and 5 other people. And I was like, take me through your house. Let me take a look at it. And I can run numbers really fast in my head. And so I called Derek, and I was like, can you write up a contract right now and get over here? And we bought it in the driveway, like in
Oh
an
my
hour.
gosh.
But I will say that, like, it's really because once I got clear about the area and I really knew it, then it was just a matter of time.
Yeah. And I think you're doing something that a lot of people have a lot of resistance to doing, or a lot of limiting beliefs around doing, is just the thought process that you have to have a lot of money to get started in real estate. I love that this first deal, you raised $350,000 from 7 investors. And this next deal, you just go find the house and you put in an offer. Craig and I have spent many of afternoons driving around neighborhoods, looking at houses, and just putting out a bunch of different offers on homes that most people say no to. But we've had a couple people say yes to offers where we have been in a position where we could get homes for an incredible deal. So just the fact that you were willing to do this and have a vision, like we said, have that vision, and then start living into the vision before it's even become a reality. And that's exactly
Well, that's
what
how
you
it
did.
happens. That's
Yeah.
literally how the reality becomes real, like, or how the
Yeah.
dream becomes real. Is that, like, and that's why I have another company that I started alongside Happy Karma, and I was just doing it quietly on my own, and now it's become something. And so Derek and I work 50-50 on Happy Karma, and we work 50-50 on my coaching business, because I coach journaling. And something happens when you write it down. When it just lives up in your head, that's not anything. That's not anything. But the minute you start to see it on paper, and you keep seeing it and you keep writing it, you eventually will do one of 2 things. You'll either stop writing it and decide that's not something that you want to pursue, or you'll get sick of yourself writing the same thing all the time, and you'll finally take an action.
Yeah.
And that's really all that it was.
Yeah.
Is that I was just like, because Derek really wanted to flip houses, and I didn't. I really didn't. And I was like, you know what? When I married him, I really got that, like, who I am for him is I'm here to make sure he has his best life. And he's here in our marriage to make sure I have my best life. And we put our personal preferences aside a lot of times. Mostly we're aligned, but sometimes we're not. Flipping houses was not really something I wanted to do, but I knew it was never going to go away for him. So I was like, okay, that's what we'll do, because it's not going to go away unless you do it.
So how much money did you make on that first and second flip?
Not a lot. It was a JV partnership. I want to say that I think it was a 70-30. I don't think it was 60-40. I think it was 70-30, which is crazy because Derek was the one that designed the house. We learned a lot. Then they went on and used the house plans that he designed.
Oh, wow.
Multiple other houses. We would see them all over the east side. And Derek's like, there's my house again. And I was like, yeah. So in hindsight, like, we really should have protected ourselves a little bit more. But I think about like 30 or 40,000. So, to have never done it before,
that's a win.
Any of your own money, it was a huge win. Now, the houses that we did in Western Trails, we worked with a realtor on. We pre-sold them before they were ready. Do not recommend that. We probably would have made a lot more money. But the bigger thing is that the hoops we had to jump through was just really unnecessary. Like, we were having blue tape walkthroughs on remodels. I'm like, this isn't new construction, guys. It's a 70-year-old house.
Right.
So we've been doing this only 4 years. Every single project, we've learned so much about what we like, what we don't like. We're moving solely into private client work now because we don't like designing for anyone. We really, really love designing like for a family and having a 2,000 square foot house that they think is too small be more livable because they're using spaces smarter. And that comes from our travels, honestly. Like, that's where we really learned about like space and how to best utilize it. So it's been really cool. But I look at the last 4 years as like, we just went to college. Like, this is our like education in real estate. And now we're, becoming like the next version of Happy Karma Homes.
Yeah. So tell me about some of the current projects that you're working on.
So we've got 2 houses that are going to be finished pretty soon. They're in Temple, Texas. So about an hour north of Austin, because I, don't fight my gut and had the realization that like we really love things becoming something. And as much as we loved Austin, like Austin was already so cool. And we wanted to be a part of a small town kind of revitalization. So we live in the historic district in Temple, and the houses that we're doing are in the historic district. 902 North 9th Street, which is kind of like the main thoroughfare. Temple was founded in like 1881 as a railroad town. And so, there are these big, historic, beautiful homes. And the one in particular that we're working on, it's about 2,200 square feet. We'll be listing it at probably around $475. So the prices are amazing in Temple. And what's cool is that it's literally a new house in an old frame. So people that want like that old, that charm that a 1920s craftsman has, they will get that, but they'll get new HVAC, new electrical, new plumbing, like all the new foundation, new roof. Like, it's literally, we do houses that are so bad. In fact, many of them were condemned when we bought them. So as a result, it's like new construction in the old frame. And then we're doing one around the corner, 804 North 5th Street, that we actually bought when I was in my last ultrasound before having our second child. That I found out in that ultrasound was breech. And I was like, hang on, I don't have time for that right now. Put in $10,000 over the asking price because we can't get into a bidding war because I'm going to have a baby in 4 days. And wait a minute, the baby's breech? Like, it was such a mess.
I love you. I'm going to be the exact same way.
I have a solution for that. There are natural ways. I got the baby to flip later that night. So it was
beautiful. Fine. Oh my gosh.
Don't worry
wow. I love your vision. I love the fact that you see something and you go for it and you make it a reality. I want to wrap up this podcast, Anna, with you telling someone who is listening to this episode, they want to break the chains that are holding them back from living their most aligned life. And they're afraid to take that risk, but they know something bigger and greater and more aligned is available to them. What would you say to them?
Last I checked, no one else is going to live your life for you. And we have absolutely no idea how long we're here for. And there's nothing to wait for. There's just nothing to wait for. Like, a big reason that we wanted to travel around the world is like we had, people often say like, oh, I'll do that when I retire, but they don't make it to retirement. We like put things off thinking that we have all of this time here. And what I'm very clear about is that we don't, that's the one thing we don't know. So there's absolutely nothing to wait for. Bankruptcy, debt, like whatever, like all of that, like one of my favorite people in town, like I think he's gone bankrupt many times. The guy's having a blast. Like it's not a problem. It's all just here for us to try on different things and explore different aspects of ourselves. And I just would tell people, what are you waiting for? Like, what actually are you waiting for? It's not going to be better tomorrow. Like, do it today.
So beautiful. Anna, if somebody is interested in learning more about you, your coaching business, your design build business, how can they find you?
Yes, super easy. Anna K. Morris is my coaching business. It's ANNAKMORRIS.com. And then our design build company is happykarmahomes.com. And we work privately on both of those. I also have group coaching programs that are starting here soon. So people can work with us in many ways.
Oh, Anna, thank you so much for sharing your time, your energy, your heart, your spirit, your mind. I feel like this episode was so rich, and I think anyone listening to this episode is just going to leave really asking themselves new questions about their life and what they're really up to, and whether it's in alignment with what they want. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
If you are listening to this episode, please make sure and leave me a review below. Or if you have someone that you know would love this episode, share it with a friend. I can't wait to see you all next week for part 4 of the How Do They Afford That series. I will see you soon. Bye-bye.